Hello, my name is Aaron Judy. I'd like to talk to you about the revolving door ethical dilemma for education 6013. We'll talk about the background of the United States Department of Defense, give some information about the revolving door ethical dilemma. It will state the ethical issue on which I conducted the case study. We will apply the resolve strategy, make a decision, and conclude. If you're interested in my references, I'd ask you to look at the paper, and there you will find all the resources that I used to conduct this research. Department of Defense is one of the nation's largest employers, has over 1.3 million active duty servicemen and women. It covers the United States Air Force, the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the United States Coast Guard. 742,000 civilian employees. This is as of 2015. This does not include all of the specific DoD support contractors that also support DoD on a day-to-day basis. In 2006, 86,000 former DoD employees were employed by various defense contractors, and out of those, 2,000 were high-ranking officers, program managers, or contracting officers. So out of that 86,000, 2,000 were lieutenant generals, captains, lieutenant colonels, senior executive people, and program managers and contracting officers that didn't oversee small procurements, but these are folks that are overseeing anywhere between $2 and $10 billion procurement contracts. In January 2012 to May 2013, 379 senior DoD officials actually requested ethics opinions. So what they were doing was they were looking into various contractors they may want to go work for once they exit the government or retire from the military, and were asking ethics counselors their opinion on whether or not it was ethical that they could do this. Out of those 379, 84% had already listed specific DoD contractors. So what this meant was they were already looking at people and talking to specific companies that they identified that they could possibly go work for. We also see this with CEOs who are frequently appointed by Congress for secretary-like positions, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Navy, State Department positions, Secretary of Education, in which if you look at their careers, not all, but a majority of them probably started in the private sector government, maybe even did some lobbying, and eventually became a president, vice president, or CEO of a large organization or corporation, and got appointed by Congress for a specific secretary cabinet position. Also, the Government Accountability Office looked at 21 major offices within the DoD and found that 15 out of 21 offices had contractors outnumbering DoD personnel. So the contractor support aspect of the Pentagon and working within inside the Department of Defense is extremely high. There are interpersonal relationships and cultures that are blended with the defense contracting private sector community and the federal government community. What happens is with these major offices, this blurs the lines of authority, responsibility, and oversight. So if we look at the revolving door ethical issue, I stated here Mr. Davidson, who was a made-up individual as I conducted this case study, but the issue is certainly real. Mr. Davidson started his career working for a defense contractor and is now a senior executive in the DoD with 25 years of federal service. Mr. Davidson has been offered a vice president position with Defense Solutions Incorporated, a $10 billion company. Mr. Davidson is aware of a one-year probation period but can work first as a subcontracted consultant before joining Defense Solutions Incorporated. What should Mr. Davidson do? The one-year probation period is due to the fact in the ethical laws it states if you worked on a contract or oversaw $10 million or more, you cannot take compensation from a specific DoD contractor who worked that for at least 1 year. But there is obviously a loophole. You could be subcontracted as a consultant but not work for the exact prime who ran that contract. So let's apply resolve and look at the solutions to this ethical dilemma. I broke it into three. Mr. Davidson can retire and join a non-DoD industry. He can accept the subcontractor position but decline the vice president position, or he can accept both the subcontractor and the vice president position. Potter Stewart, a U.S. Supreme Court justice, once said, "Ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do." If we look at this, we ask ourselves three questions. Is it legal? Is it balanced? And how will it make me feel about myself? Is it legal? All three approaches are certainly legal. Is it balanced? We will see here as we conduct a resolve strategy that not all three solutions are obviously balanced. And how will it make me feel about myself? This one I equate to Proverbs 25, which says, "Knowing what is right is like deep water in the heart. A wise person draws from the well within." So if we are drawing from the well within, we should know how it makes us feel, and we should make a decision not only based on whether it's legal or whether it's balanced, but obviously second, probably the most important thing after whether or not it is legal, is it in line with God's word? How do we arrive to a decision? We looked at three outcomes, three impacts, three values, and an evaluation. As I stated, all three decisions are legal, but which one is the right thing to do? As you come across ethical dilemmas, most of the time it will not be the hard part of deciding whether or not it's legal. If you work for any type of organization, even churches these days all have some type of legal representation in some form or another. So if you think something is illegal or legal, they can normally pretty quickly tell you whether or not it is legal or illegal, but it might not be right. And that's where the ethical dilemma comes into play and where the resolve strategy is extremely important in these types of situations. So there are three outcomes based on which decision Mr. Davidson would make: retire and join a non-DoD industry, accept the subcontractor position but decline the VP position, or accept both the subcontractor and vice president position. If he retires and joins a non-DoD industry, this is certainly probably the easiest way out of any type of ethical dilemma. But it's also going to require some sacrifice. It's probably not the biggest compensation package. It could be with an industry that Mr. Davidson is not familiar with. He will have to establish a new repertoire. And he will also have to, more than likely, dust off his resume, go back to interviewing, apply, and be qualified against other candidates who might be just as qualified as he is. The second one, accepting the subcontractor position but declining the vice president position, is somewhere in the middle. So is it legal? Yes. Is it balanced? The short-term solution, it is balanced. Long-term, I do not believe this is a balanced solution. It allows Mr. Davidson to work for a subcontractor but not put himself in an ethical situation with the larger defense contractor, which is going to require him to share lots of contacts and support fundraising events and share lots of information he's learned over his 25 years of managing and working large DoD contracts with various companies when he was with the Department of Defense. If he accepts both the subcontractor and vice president position, which is still legal as long as he takes the 1-year probation period, this will certainly require Mr. Davidson to attend federal events giving speeches, fundraisers, continuously engaging senior executive personnel. He will probably be in compromising positions on a weekly basis, have to decide whether or not he could share certain information, and his influence over Defense Solutions Incorporated will certainly have an impact on their current and future financial outcome, and he will have to answer to shareholders. The various impacts that can occur with all three solutions are somewhat broad. The likely impact for one is his friends and family and coworkers, well, not necessarily his family, but his coworkers and friends might not understand that decision. You'll have to cut ties there, and it could be a little bit harder for him to figure out how to move about a sector outside of the defense industry. And values for number 2 is still legal, but this is a short-term solution, as I stated before. His action could still appear inappropriate and persuade him to violate personal ethical principles. And values for number 3, the solution would certainly require a great amount of scrutiny to ensure he is being truthful, fair, and honest. And this solution could also look inappropriate or possibly bring shame upon him in the DoD if he were to make an ethical mistake. I do not believe this solution upholds to Proverbs 20, verse 5. And in evaluating these 3 outcomes, impacts, and values, the decision we made was that Mr. Davidson should choose option 1, retire and join another industry that does not do DoD work. This decision passes all 3 ethical questions. Is it legal? Is it balanced? And how will it make me feel about myself? It certainly is legal, and it's certainly balanced. Unlike the second solution, where Mr. Davidson could work for a subcontractor, this gives him both a short-term and long-term solution, so he does not have to worry about getting himself into other future ethical issues that may arise as he goes into another industry area. How will it make me feel about myself? This should give a clear conscience and understanding that I am completely severing the tie with my federal employee experience and with the Department of Defense and going to work for a completely different type of company. The only weaknesses that I could find with this decision is probably back to the one that I stated at the beginning of the presentation, in which CEOs have been appointed to congressional cabinet positions. So even though Mr. Davidson would go work for a outside industry, someone that works outside of the DoD industry, he could still at some point in the future possibly be asked to come back for a congressional appointee and have to make that decision later down the road. And most importantly, this decision does not violate any of God's principles. Thomas Jefferson said, an ethical person ought to do more than he's required to do and less than he's allowed to do. Thank you for your time. If you're interested in more information, I would ask you to read my paper. I look forward to your comments, and I appreciate the class and have learned a lot and enjoyed being in the course with everyone here in Education 6013. Take care and hope to see you online.